Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jordan here. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. All right, so obviously if you've clicked on this, you wanted to know how this stacked up after a year. So this is the Canon EFS 24mm f2.8. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, first off, I just want to start with price. I have done a review on this. So this is just like a 1 year follow-up. I actually bought this last year in April of 2020. So I've had it for a year. How does it stack up? So price point wise, brand new, it's $149.99 on Canon's website. I did see it on B&H for $149 flat. Refurbished from Canon's website, you're looking at $119.99. I have seen these go used on eBay for roughly between about, I would say anywhere from about 70 to 100 bucks, depending. Something to keep in mind, you probably could find these on the Facebook Marketplace as well. So this is designed for the APS-C size cameras. This is designed to be used on like the crop frame cameras like the Canon Rebel T7, the T6, the SL2, SL3. If you adapted it to the Canon mirrorless systems like the EOS M3 or the mirrorless M6 or M6 Mark II, you could use that on there. This is a pretty decent portrait lens. It's really good for like street photography, landscape photography. I've used this for astrophotography plenty of times. I actually just made a video about astrophotography lenses, and this was one of the ones that I kind of went over to, especially for the price point. This does have the STM motors in it, so it is pretty quiet when you have it on autofocus, especially if you're using it for video. This was my main lens that I used to shoot all of my videos on YouTube with, which was paired to my Canon Rebel SL3. So something to consider too. When you have it on any of those, the autofocus works really well, and I think that you could probably even use some of the audio from that if you had to. So something to keep in mind. Like I said, I've used this for portraits and stuff. It does really good. Sometimes kind of wish that I had like a 24 to 70 in this range, mostly because the equivalent for this at 24 millimeters is roughly about 38.8, I believe it is. So you're roughly about a 40. Full frame, obviously, you'd be looking at 24 270. So, but this is a really good lens, especially for street photography. It's really good for astro. It's pretty decent for portraits. There was some instances where I kind of had to like move myself forward or crop in. So that's kind of why I wish that I had like a full frame equivalent. But 38 millimeters is pretty decent, so just something to consider with that too. Now, when I did the original review on this, I don't know if I added any of like what I've been doing for my like lens reviews, which is testing out the apertures and stuff on these. So I went ahead and did that. You can adapt this to a mirrorless. I have the Canon EOS RP, and with the adapter, I can adapt this lens and still use it. The EOS RP automatically crops this into a 1.6. I cannot use this as a full frame lens, so I still get the same equivalent, but I did shoot on the Canon EOS RP and the T7. So let me go ahead and jump through the aperture ranges on this. So at an f2.8, you're looking at pretty decent sharpness in the center, but you are giving a pretty heavy vignette all around. It does have some pretty soft corners, and you do get a pretty big barrel distortion at 24 millimeters, especially if you don't have any of the peripheral corrections on in camera, or if you're not using some sort of a profile correction in Lightroom. Stop down to an f3.5, you're looking at more sharpness in the corners. F5.6, where the vignette kind of starts to disappear, but it doesn't go away entirely. It just isn't as heavy as it is at the wider apertures of like a 2.8 or a 3.2. And then you have a good sharpness all around in a 5.6. I would say roughly about at an f9, the heavy vignette really starts to disappear entirely, which you're still left with some sort of a vignette around the image, but it's not as bad as like an f2.8 or an f3.2. And then at an f16 is when the diffraction starts to kick in, so you will notice some softness. F14 is actually pretty sharp too, so pretty much all the way up to an F14 you get pretty decent sharpness. This maxes out at an aperture of f22. So shooting this on the Canon Rebel T7, the results are pretty much the same. At an f2.8 you do a barrel distortion, a heavy vignette, You do get sharpness in the center, and then you do have pretty soft corners. Stop down to an f3.5 is when that kind of starts to go away a little bit. You get more sharpness all around. Same thing at an f5.6, you're looking at sharpness all around, and the heavy vignette kind of starts to disappear. I would say at an f7.1 is the prime aperture on the Canon Rebel T7 for this lens specifically. So pretty much any crop frame sensor cameras, you're probably looking at a 7.1 for like its like sharpest aperture. And then pretty much at an f9 is when the heavy vignette really starts to disappear. At an f16, same thing, the diffraction starts to kick back in, and pretty much goes all the way to f22, so sharpness in the corners and then pretty sharp in the center. As far as the bokeh goes, this is an f2.8, so you're not going to get some crazy bokeh like you would with an f1.4 and f1.8 50mm lens. I do believe Canon has 24mm f1.8, which I think is roughly about $600 on Canon's website, which is the EF version of this lens for full frame. So just something to keep in mind. You're not going to get some crazy out of focus background bokeh with this, although it is pretty decent, it is usable, and it is quite soft, so just something to consider. I would say that this is a pretty decent all-around lens, especially if you're someone who likes to do a lot of landscape, astro, or street photography. It's a pretty decent full like wide angle. It's a pretty decent wide angle portrait lens. Like if you want to get more of the surrounding in the image with your subject. 38mm equivalent, no matter what you use this EFS lens on. So whether it's a crop frame or a full frame camera. And then that's pretty much it. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.